How are you, Julie?
I'm still waking up. I overslept. So I'm having my first coffee of the day now, which is also
Nice.
my coffee after lunch. In one.
I was going to say, considering I'm like 2 hours behind you guys and I've been awake, that's some sleep, Julie.
I know. It's like I got up. I did what I had to do. Like I had breakfast. I took care of the cats, and I was tired. I lay back down, and then when I realized it was almost 1 in the afternoon, which is 2 here now. So, oof.
Nice.
Oofty.
So let's say hello. Who do we have here? We have. Do you wanna? Do you want to get? Oh, by the way, everybody, Marilyn, as you can see, is not here, but she's not gonna be with us today. And then I won't be here next week, so it's like we're taking turns. But actually, it's just how it is. And we have our. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
What am I doing?
I don't know. Do you want to introduce our guest? Do you want our guest, because Mark is a co-host. And or do you want to read the comments that I'm starting? The hello, say hello to people.
Yeah. Why don't I read your starred comments? So that's always fun.
Excellent.
Let's get a few more in here though, because I only have 2 starred comments.
Okay.
We do have since this is about me. So hey Denver Steve, this is from our friend Free Xenu Project. Hey Denver Steve, miss y'all so much. Been looking forward to catch a complete live all week. Well, Free Xenu Project, FXP. If you're gonna catch one, this is the one to catch. If you're gonna catch 2 tonight, Xenu Nation is the second one to catch. But this is a great one to be at. So glad to have you here for sure, and good to see you, Free Xenu. It has been a long week. Haven't seen you enough. So Nasty Nathaniel, look at that. Clearwater Chad, you are a legend of Clearwater. He sure is.
Of all Clearwaters.
Yep. Nate's got a good channel. He does the A1 audits.
Hey Nate, I got to tell you, I've been watching a lot more of. I mean, I've watched a lot of your videos over time, but I've been doing some playlisty stuff, some marathon-y stuff, and dude, that's all I have to say. Some of the scenarios you put yourself in, I did get to see the one where you were, let's just be polite about it, detained by the police chief, by the former police chief, and that was not a cool scenario for you to have to be in, because dude, you've done nothing wrong. But I love the First Amendment audits. I love watching stupid people, let's be honest. So I watch when the dumbards come out and start asking you to leave, and you're like, no. Just why? There's no reason. But the way you talk through it and kind of what you've, you know what I'm talking about. The way you work your way through a lot of those scenarios is just awesome. So kudos to you and for everything that you do. I was going to say do, but for everything that
of course you were.
Everybody, do yourselves a favor, and if you have any sort of interest whatsoever in First Amendment audits, go and watch Nasty Nathaniel's channel. It's awesome. It's honestly, it's far and away one of the best things on YouTube. So definitely do it. We've got oh, look at that. Look at this. This one is specifically for Mark Turi. We've got Marcus in Theta with a nice little Vulcan salute. Vulcan.
Live proper and live long.
All that. Marcus says, I'm taking a Londonite through making a row.
Say roux.
Taking a Londonite through making a roux. Oh, yeah, a roux. Yeah.
I have no idea what that means, but sounds important.
It's a roux. It's like a sauce. Yeah. Free Xenu again says, Juliana, I have 2 notifications. I will have to watch Reese and Aaron later. Good choice.
Ew.
Everybody, good choice.
Good. Yep.
Watch Aaron and Reese later.
Yeah, they're on every day. We're not.
They are.
Yeah.
They're going through phone calls. I mean, the phone
Which
calls. Phone calls.
Amazing phone calls, but
they are amazing phone calls, but they've been pre-recorded. They're not going anywhere. So
yeah,
that is true. That is correct.
Very true.
as I don't want to miss you guys again. Mwah! To Free Xenu. I miss you all so much, and I feel bad. I've been so busy with work and other things. Well, life happens, man. Life happens.
Nothing wrong being busy with work either. We have, by the way, just to say, like, I'm very excited that, of course, we're gonna have less people, or we're gonna have fewer people here. I'm gonna have a crazy cat. I'm sorry, but there's a lot of lives happening at the same moment at the same time this afternoon. SPTV is all over the place this afternoon, which is very good, very exciting.
Yeah,
Yes,
good
they are.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just makes it harder because we have to watch everything on replay.
It's Saturday. I've got stuff to do, but like this. But
Yeah.
I've got stuff after this and before Xenu Nation, but
Mhm.
I'll just be watching stuff.
Of course. What else? we
Hey,
have?
sorry, Julie. I was talking over you.
No, we always are. It's the internet.
All right. Well, hey, to John,
Hey, John.
Sostowski.
Oh
I don't know.
I got
I
the
was watching
David
back on my
Miscavige.
last video, and I don't know if these can be heard.
I can hear it.
Okay, good. There were a couple that I couldn't hear. So, hey, from Northeast Pennsylvania, hashtag Team Xenu, hashtag defeating Scientology, one Mr. Bill at a time.
Yep.
no, the Mr. Bills are multiplying. And Chad has a new doll now. The dolls
Yeah,
are multiplying.
John gave it to me. John Satowski. It's a
Ooh,
life-size GM doll.
Is that
Yeah,
this
the-
guy?
little baby
Yep.
baby.
Yep.
Little
we
baby
got him.
baby. Yeah.
I'm sure he loves that, by the way.
I like that. Oh, because you know what? I hadn't John hadn't scored my address yet, so he sent me the link to purchase the
cool.
little baby Davy. So had I given him my address, I would have saved $1.50. So thanks, John. We love you.
Yeah, he is great.
Sostowski is awesome. So so we've got and not to neglect everyone else that's out there as well, but hey to everybody, and we do, of course, want to not neglect. We've got a wonderful guest hiding in the wings here. It's a frequent guest to the Nerdy Bunch, but always a pleasure to have. Directly from the rainy lands of the United Kingdom. Oh, good. She's nodding to me, so that means it is raining. I scored the right. Right. The mysterious Neverlands, nether regions of the UK. Oh, that sounds dirty. Ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome to our channel? This is channels. The one, the only, the luthier herself. It's Joe. Woo! Oh, am I supposed to click her? I'll click her
I
on.
don't know. You were introducing. I thought you
I was
would.
just
Nobody
introducing.
did.
I don't know.
The Joe.
Hello.
Nobody has introduced her.
Welcome. Hello.
Hey, Joe.
Hello. It's good to be here. Thank you for
Oh,
having me.
hey, drink that. That's an awesome mug. Look at that.
Oh.
Look
Oh,
at that.
nice.
I love that. Oh,
Nice.
very nice.
I have a very important question to ask you guys. Do you prefer
away.
this or this?
Normally, I would tell you the other one, but I like normally I would say that, but I like the filling of the screen.
With
Yeah.
5, I feel this is so. Ugh.
Yeah,
With
4,
6,
that's-
that works, but with 5, I prefer
Yeah.
this.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
the second one works better for me because it's being redone to my channel, but don't worry about that.
Yeah. Absolutely, you got
and I
it.
think it looks nicer on, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, so we
This is
got
good.
Marcus
This
at
is good.
second too, so this is the one.
This is the one. This is the one.
Guys, I might
I guess
have
it's a Rue,
to-
by the way.
No, and yes to the question. The answer is yes. New hat. I am celebrating the Colorado Rockies farm team. No, this is their single A farm team. This is the Fresno. Oh boy, I got to get it right here. It's the Fresno Grizzlies. So
The
there
Grizzlies.
you go.
Nice.
There you go. The Fresno Grizzlies. That's celebrating them today. So it's still baseball season, so it seems right. And I don't know if I can get a hat for the New Mexico Isotopes. That is their AAA team. So
Same
For
as
real, that's the
Springfield.
name.
that's their baseball. Their AAA baseball team is the New Mexico. I think it might be the Albuquerque, but I think it's the New Mexico Isotopes. Yeah, because
Never seen it.
Oppenheimer and stuff.
Denver, I got something to show you.
What you got?
Where-
Luffy stuff.
There we go. This one here is the 1898.
Oh,
Wow.
it's beautiful.
Wow.
They're all
It
beautiful,
is.
but
Yeah, they
Luffy is
are.
beautiful. Listen to the mandolin ring. That is nice. Thank you for showing.
I just
that.
remember we were
That's
talking about that in
Yeah.
a previous thing. So
sweet. Yeah. Oh, that's
Did you
amazing.
guys see
Very
the carving that Joe did that she posted on Facebook? Her
No.
latest carving from it's so pretty. I wanted to ask you, like, how do you do that? Do you have like a
you're
stencil
too
to?
kind.
I
So
first
it's
I
like
didn't-
I carve it with scalpels. Two particular types of scalpel. So there's one scalpel, but two blades. There's a deburring blade, which is what I use to cut out like all the space. And then I use what's called a chisel blade to create that 3D effect with the bevel.
Okay. Because I was wondering,
Does
like,
that
'cause it
make
seems
sense?
like there's one that goes up, then it goes down, and then it goes like.
Yeah,
over
that's
and
the
over.
3D effect. I mean, it's, yeah.
So pretty.
Yeah.
The Renaissance ones are even more complicated, but I haven't done one of those for a couple of months, but I've got a few more in the order book, so see another one of those soon, I'm sure.
All right. The reason the person says
Thank you
Joe
for
is
being a
awesome,
project.
and then he also commented that on your Joe. That is beautiful.
Thank you again. And
It
you are
is.
awesome.
So, am I on mute? I'm not on mute.
You are not a me.
I'm not on mute. Am I on mute? No, if you can hear me. So before we dive too far into all of this, I do want to, and forgive me if I'm fluttering between a couple of different screens here. Let's do that. So one of the things that I definitely want to make sure we are all aware of. Oh, is it not there? Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Sorry, I just wasn't looking so high. So we do want to, and this is probably not my place to do it, but I'm going to do it because I can. Ha ha ha. What I want to do is announce that one of our own here has just relaunched their YouTube channel, and that's really exciting for us. Mark Turi has freshened up a channel
This
that
guy. Yeah.
that guy that guy there
There you go.
freshened up a channel from the past that is now live, and we want everybody to swing down and subscribe to. The exciting news is there's already content there. How's that for amazing? If you go to youtube.com or
The link is in the chat.
/
Yeah.
Mark Turi.
I'm just on my channel now. The thing is loading. It's going to take a second here. Do I have something? Well, I have a playlist going right now, and some of the videos that on my that are on my playlist are going to be videos, just because it's taking a little while. I had to do a couple just before we went live. I had to do a couple of different things, and I'm just going to wait until we until the stream is over, and then I'll get some videos by hopefully, like, because it's late here today where I am, but it's of course much earlier for where you guys are. So at least by tomorrow or later today, I'll have some videos up as well.
Awesome.
Are you
Excellent.
gonna have a playlist of your appearances in other places? That'd be cool too.
Mhm.
Like you have all the videos with Doug, and then
Mhm.
the podcast with Rachel Bernstein. I don't know what else, like other, like Aaron or other places where you've been.
Yeah, I'm gonna basically start with those first, and just put. I
Okay.
think there's like 30 videos, so hopefully they'll all go through. There won't be any issues, and if
Cool.
there are, no big deal. But they'll be on the playlist regardless.
Cool.
Awesome.
Excellent.
So I've posted
Well,
the link.
Links in chat. Yep. And the link is also down below in the thingy.
right.
It's Mark A. Turi
It's in the description. Yeah.
in the
All one
description.
word.
The
And I will
show
also post
notes,
it on my channel
as
for you.
Mitch would say. So yeah, so definitely subscribe to Mark and also subscribe to Joe. Which
Yep.
do we have Joe in chat yet? We don't have Joe's in chat yet, but we will. Joe, what do you subscribe to Joe? Everybody,
I have a
subscribe to
banner
Joe.
for Joe. I have a banner for Joe for both of them, I think.
Oh, cool.
Let me
So
just
do
find
that.
it here.
So do that. Make sure you. There we go. So there
the
we go.
first
It's
one-
the first one is YouTube. It's at Joe DiCeppo.
Both are
one is,
YouTube.
Yeah, the first one is my main YouTube, which is the music, the lutherie, the everything. And then the second one is a podcast I did about coercive control with my friend and colleague Kai.
wonderful. So do that.
Excellent.
Everybody subscribe to both of Joe's and subscribe to Mark's. And make sure you're subscribed to all of ours. By the way, congratulations this last week to Marilyn. I know both Marilyn and Joe last week on this show both reached their 1,000 subscriber mark, which was fantastic. I know that Marilyn through the course of last week reached her 4,000 watch hours. So now our goal is to get which direction am I pointing? This one, the lady of the evening, Juliana Bittencourt at
Of
the
the afternoon.
A brasileira.
yeah,
A
just lost
brasileira.
it. The Scientologist lady there she is at Scientologist. Make sure you're subscribed to her as well, and make sure we can't do watch hours yet, can we? Oh, we can.
What?
You've got these
For
videos
me?
up. You've got these
Yeah, all
videos
these
up.
videos are giving me watch hours.
Oh
Already.
yeah. So I was I'm like, there's no content, but yes, there is.
There
So
is.
yes,
There-
watch the Nerdy Bunch. Make sure you've seen all of the Nerdy Bunch videos on her channel, and
And I'm doing playlists too. I'm putting them in playlists. The Nerdy Bunch and the Saturday night, the Monday, Saturday Night Live, the Monday night after parties.
Excellent.
Oh, perfect. So there you
That's
go,
great.
everybody. Make sure
So
you're.
if anybody wants to just run them for the watch hours, you can.
Yeah, no. Let's make sure that we've got that Juliana gets her watch hours as well. We're gonna push Mark and Joe. Have you made watch hours? I'm not even sure.
No, so I've got to 1,000 subscribers just over now, but I haven't got enough watch hours yet to be monetized. So
Well, we've got a project here, folks. We
Next
want to make sure
milestone.
Juliana, Mark, and Joe all reach their 4,000 watch hours. Let's get them there. Let's get no reason to not get paid by the crazy YouTubes just for watching. I mean, if YouTube's going to force you to watch a stupid Grant Cardone commercial, you may as well pay Mark for it. Or I'm sorry, I just pointed at Joe. Or pay Mark for it. There we go. Pay them. Get them paid for watching those, for you having to watch those pointless videos or commercials. Not the videos. The videos are not pointless. The commercials are pointless. So I also want to say, just as an apology up front, if I have to go dark for a bit, I've got some folks doing construction in my bathroom today, and I've got 3 dogs hanging out outside. Don't worry, they have water, and it's cool here today in Colorado. But if they do happen to need my attention, I may have to run away for a bit. So just a warning. But that being said, I don't know. What are we doing today, guys? I remember some rambling, some talking about some good stuff, but I don't quite recall what that was all about. So, folks, tell me what I'm doing here.
Denver, are you in the same city as Chris Shelton?
I am south of Chris Shelton. I'm in a different city south of Chris Shelton,
Okay.
but I am in technically what would be considered a suburb of the city Chris is in. So I am actually in the exact same city as Mark and Claire are. So, or excuse me, the
they're
exact
there as
same
well. Okay.
town. This is the town of. So, for some stupid distinction, a 70,000 population town, but.
Wow.
But yeah, so no, we're not horribly far from where Chris is.
That's
Excellent.
excellent.
And if anybody needs any wheels greased, Chris Shelton is now my Facebook friend. So
Nice.
y'all know that Facebook friends rule the world. So I can
Yep.
make Chris do anything. Right, Chris Shelton? Thank you, Chris, for being a friend. Traveling down that road and back again. But I want to be Blanche because I like to be trashy. I guess we have to figure out who's who. At least from the I think would Marilyn be? So Juliana. So of the four, sorry, Mark and Joe. So of the four of the four Never Ends, if I can be Blanche, that would be wonderful. Because I do sleeping with Steve-O, by the way. I do think that Clearwater Chad would probably be shoot, now I'm losing B. Arthur, her character. I think that no, I take that back. No. Well, this is gonna offend somebody anyway that I do it, I think. So Juliana is the little mama.
Not the mama.
Estelle Getty, thank you. Maybe actually Chad, because Marilyn is so sassy. I think Marilyn is probably B. Arthur. And that would mean that Chad is Chad's the one that lived the longest. Chad is
Chad's Rose.
Rose
Rosen Island.
Betty White. Yeah. So
I have never watched The Golden Girls, so
Well, Chad.
I'll accept
yeah.
anything you guys give me.
Chad doesn't like it.
Well, no, not that I don't. Not that Chad doesn't like it, but Chad pictures himself as the more. You remember next door they had the doctor. I want to be the sleazy neighbor. Forgot his name.
Oh yeah, so like Empty Nest.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he wasn't so sleazy. Sleazy was
Well, not the doctor, but okay, he had like
The other
guy
guy.
that busted in. Yeah, the other guy.
Oh,
Forgot his
that
name.
guy.
The other
Yeah.
neighbor.
Yep. Okay.
I don't know if he was sleazy.
Oh,
or not,
you are
but
the
he-
sleazy
yeah.
neighbor. Okay, that's
Okay.
probably fair.
He was
That's
a sleazy
probably
neighbor. It's okay to
Yeah.
call a sleaze a sleaze.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. But if you threw a
If it's
party,
true,
if you threw a party and invited everyone you knew, you would see
Yeah.
the biggest gift would be for me, and the card attached would say, "Thank you for being a friend."
Yeah.
That's right. All right, on with it, everyone. So quick comment from Free Xenu Project Osa. Oh, Osa, hi Osa. You smell like poo, by the way. David Miscavige plays with dolls. He spent thousands of dollars on while you slave for him. For $50 a week, 47 and change, unless you've gotten a raise for inflation. Probably not. He will forever be in the minds of millions of people as Puppet Boy. I do like that nickname, Puppet Boy. That's good. That is good. By the way, if you are a YouTube content creator, part of SPTV, please make sure you reach out to Claire Headley, Claire at blownforgood.com, and make sure you give her your name and address so she can send you one of the Troll in a Holes, the Christmas gift, the David Miscavige troll doll that they are manufacturing currently. So yes, I hear it's 30 to 45 days out, but I'm quite excited to get my hands on a troll in the hole.
Are they giving them?
To the content creators, they are.
Including just the main ones, not us, right?
I don't consider myself a main one, and I am on a list to get one. So send your info, and
Yeah, send it. I'm gonna send mine too.
please do. So
And too, I don't know.
yeah.
They want to get that stuff out there.
Because whatever I asked them, I didn't get a response for, like a couple different things back in the day. Simple things. I don't know. I don't want to feel like I'm not really doing anything.
I would say send your info if they deem you unworthy, then but no, they
I'll
Claire,
ask you to send my.
Claire has
I'll
already
ask you to send my info.
yeah, Claire already responded to my request and said, yeah. So it send your stuff and
Send me your email so that I can copy paste it and change it with my name. Put my name on it.
well, my email had a lot of personal stuff in there too. I mean, more personal than my address. Like, yeah. Just, hey, Claire, can I get one? Just here's my
I won't
info.
do that.
Love you. Do it.
I won't do that.
Do it.
I would do it. I'm going to do it.
Do it. Chad's going to do it. Do it.
I mean, I'm going to mention that I'm going to display
Do it.
mine like when I do
she
videos.
doesn't know
and
you
stuff,
don't have
but
content. She knows you're part of the.
They
I have
wanna
content. What are you talking about? I'm here.
Okay, that's good point. Good point.
They
I
want to
take it
get
back.
they want to get that on the they want to get the dolls exposure.
Mark's
It's a
been
great
on
way to do
screen
it.
with you, so you're fine.
Plus
I'm
your
not gonna
Steve-O's
do it.
friend.
Plus your Steve-O's friend. There you go.
Yep.
There you go. And although I won't say that it's happening at this moment, just remember, Mark Headley has said he sneaks in on many of these shows and just hides in the background, just
I understand. I understand
Watches.
his feeling.
so he knows. So send it. Just send it. It's an easy email.
That's what I get for missing their show last night.
That's right. Let's do a quick one before we dive into before we dive into what's going on here today. Yeah, thank you, John. I love this name and I couldn't remember it. That's why I just called him the troll in the hole, or troll of the hole, or whatever we're calling it. But yes, Captain Little Boss Baby Davy Dirty Poopy Pants. I love that name and I will call it that. Just understand, I will have to print that and tape it onto a monitor for the first 2 weeks so I can say it right. But it's Captain Little Boss Baby Davy Dirty Poopy Pants, and that's my favorite part is the Davy Dirty Poopy Pants. God, I can't even read it when I'm staring at it.
Uh-huh.
Captain Little Boss Baby Davy Dirty Poopy Pants. There we go. I did it. Haha. So,
Sounds good.
Very good.
yes, Marcus. Mark Headley is a lurker. Mark Headley, in case he is here, Mark Headley likes to watch. So
It's good.
So there we go. Ooh, Joe, what do you got? You got a thing. You got a thing there. You gonna do a thing with a thing?
Go for it.
Maybe not this one, but I was just gonna say this would be a perfect one for when we do the.
That's pretty, yeah. With the
God,
hearts.
yeah, with the hearts,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Wait, take this off.
Yeah.
Everybody do their hearts, and Joe can
Hearts.
show her.
Grr.
Mark, you need a heart.
And then this,
There you go.
this.
There you go.
It never looks
That
like
looks
a
like a
heart
heart or a
anymore.
spade. I don't know.
I don't
That
know.
works.
Something.
Okay, I'll screenshot that.
Spade
That
maker.
looks more like a spade.
There we go.
right? And then
Thank
that's
you.
There we
a
go.
heart. There
That's
we
a
go.
spade. That's a heart. This is a heart. I don't know how to do that, but this is a heart.
Oh, Joe, I was going to ask if there's a story to that aside from the hearts. Is that
Oh,
this is
so
from
that was
1952 and blah blah blah? I don't know. Tell us a story.
that's a more modern one, but that's from Portugal. It's called Viola Amarantina. Juliana, you might know the Viola Caipira. It's
Mhm.
similar to that. Yeah, it's similar
Okay.
to that, but the Portuguese kind of ancestor of it. And it was given to me by my partner, which is so it was like, oh, it's got hearts on it. So yeah, that's why.
That's nice. That's so sweet.
Wonderful. It's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Extra special meaning for the hearts.
Beautiful. Fantastic. So I don't know why I'm laughing. I'm still
I don't
laughing
know
at the
either.
fact that Mark Headley is a lurker.
A
Yeah, hi
lurker.
Mark Headley.
It's
We
an
hope
honor
you're-
though, isn't it? Right?
Hey Mark, good to see you.
I doubt she's
Don't know
lurking
if you
here today, but
Yeah, but he could watch the replay.
if you watch it on replay, I
Oh,
doubt
yeah.
you will. But hi, Mark Headley.
Hey,
Yeah,
Mark.
yeah, Mark, lurk away. So I don't know. I think I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. What am I saying? What?
I'll say something then.
You say something then.
Okay, say something. I'm giving up on you. No, that's not what he wanted. I think we have a presentation for this afternoon. We have even a title for this stream.
There's a title to
That's
this stream.
correct.
Yeah, what is
Nice.
the title of the stream?
Over
don't
to you,
remember.
Mark.
Yeah, basically, I love doing PowerPoint presentations. Like, I love it. I don't know why. I just enjoy it. And I've been doing a lot of them over the past couple of years because being an undergrad, sometimes you have to do it in class presentation. And then when I'm doing my master's now, I'm doing in class presentations. And a couple of years ago, I was doing for a group in Toronto, I was doing, regular type of stuff. So I enjoy them very much. And so we thought it would be fun before I myself divulge into the depths of nerdiness of my brain, which eventually will happen when I do an entire thing about Deep Space Nine, which is going to happen, by the way. I'm going to do an entire Bajoran, Cardassian PowerPoint presentation. I live for these things. And then I'll do a whole bunch of other stuff. I'll do, stuff on theological stances and basics of comparative religious studies, and a whole bunch of really cool stuff that I think would be really fun, just to more condense, and other things of stuff that I've learned throughout the years. And so this presentation that I wanted to do was just, we discussed it over our group chat, and it was going to
Which I
just
don't read, by the way.
be.
Clearly
That's
not.
okay, I know. You answer, but you don't read. I get it. No, but basically, just the I guess what the why I'm interested in history, or what was some of the things like growing up and so forth that sort of got me on to becoming a historian, and then some of the stuff that I'm kind of doing a bit now. So I will do this. I will share my screen, and I will go to, where am I going now? To my presentation here. Is it working
I
or
was
no?
wondering if you can share from
I
there.
hear something.
Do you have the present option
Okay.
down at the bottom?
Present, right? Present share screen or just slides?
We can
What do I
just
do?
upload the
Sorry,
slides
guys.
if you want.
It's okay.
From my computer. That's the one. Okay. Let me just upload this. Sorry, everybody. Gonna take 1 second.
Is that music from your presentation?
Is it? There's music?
Who's playing music?
Not me.
Oh. Was it Joe? I don't know.
Do you hear the music?
Music.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not me because I was muted. I was muted because I was tuning up these because someone asked me to in the comments. So I was muted.
No idea what that was at all. Sorry.
That's not you.
It's weird. I can still hear it.
I guess it's one of Chad's dolls.
It could be.
Very strange. Very strange.
That was you.
It's too bad Mark didn't hear it.
That was Steve-O.
Oh, it was?
He did it on purpose. He played the
I was
theme
playing the
for
Deep Space Nine theme
Deep
for
Space
you.
Nine. Yeah.
I didn't
That's what
hear
it
it. I'm
was.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
hope
didn't
we
hear
don't
it.
get a copyright.
I actually don't even hear the intro music. Anyway, this is processing, so this will be here. Yeah, but I don't even hear the intro music. Maybe that's why. But yeah, Steve,
So
we will. We'll get it. We'll get into those depths. It will
we have a
be. It's going to be
question here.
wild.
While you're
Yeah?
loading that.
Oh yes, Marcus. Of course I do. Yeah, I'd love to come to the New Orleans. It's the World War II Museum. Why I would like to go there is because they have a whole section on D-Day, and they actually have landing crafts because the gentleman who designed the Higgins boat was from New Orleans. His name was Andrew Higgins, and that's where they built the Higgins boats. And if you've seen Saving Private Ryan, they used a bunch of those Higgins boats, which are basically steel. Engine and drivers are in the back, and then this big long, ramp and where they fit about 30 soldiers. Bigger ones would fit about 60 soldiers, but that's where they were basically manufactured. So they have live ones there.
These are the
so now
things
what do I
with the
do, guys?
doors that opened and everybody got shot as the doors opened. That kind of thing.
Those are called landing crafts. Yeah, exactly. So they have those actual boats there. And then apparently they have like a bunch of like just really cool D-Day stuff, which I think would be awesome.
Wow.
So now
Marcus
what do I do?
says I'll
Do I
take
do
pictures
this?
and we can make a presentation. So you guys, if you guys want to talk and set it up, that'd be cool too.
That'd be awesome.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't
Another
know.
PowerPoint.
What I
Yeah,
need
I'll add
to
this to
do
the
now,
stream
but-
here.
There we
There
go.
you go.
Okay, there we go.
Can you control it
Perfect.
from your end too?
Excellent. Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Okay.
Good.
Excellent. All right.
So
So
I'm sorry, Liz
I
Gale,
just
that I had to do it for you because I didn't know you could do it as a guest.
Oh, it's all right.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
so-
welcome to our first ever Nerdy Bunch PowerPoint. Woo!
Oh, one of many.
Nice.
Oh yes, I might even do an entire one on the character Zial. Let's we'll figure that one out later. But so my my interest, and Admiral Chirac has to get his own one. My interest in history and a summary of my research. So yeah, again, we discussed this a little bit a few days ago, and the first one I'm going to do, okay, is just on my own interests of history. So the first question that I get a lot is like, where did your interest in history come from? And for me, 100% it comes from my grandparents. They were my most earlier influences in history. And just sort of to go through some of these points here. So I ranked my grandparents in terms of their age. So my paternal, actually should say, I think I have this wrong. Oh my God, I have it completely and utterly wrong. Do I? Yeah, I made some boo-boos here. Okay. I made some boo-boos here. But this should say my maternal grandfather.
Okay.
My maternal grandfather. So yes, I made a little boo-boo here. But regardless, so let me go back here. Sorry, guys, a little bit embarrassing. Let me just remove that, and I will correct it. Just give me 2 seconds, because I want to make sure that it's actually
No
going
problem.
good here. So I apologize.
That's okay. Freezing Project asked, does Clearwater Chad see his chat?
Yep.
Do you see your chat?
Yep. I just look when I see in the comment. Yeah. Usually I just look on StreamYard, but since someone asked.
For some reason, I don't see your channel on StreamYard here on the live viewers. I don't know why, but it's live in your channel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mark, I have a question about the Nola boats. Are they the same as
Yes.
the duck W? You know, the duck, pronounced duck. Are they the same as those boats?
Those were amphibious trucks, so they did land those. The U.S. landed them in Utah Beach, but and then they were used to go across the Rhine. But they're similar. Like they were probably pretty effective, actually. Anything amphibious was effective, and from the stuff that I've read is that one of the biggest problems with the Americans on Omaha Beach was that none of the armor made it to the shore, which you hear in Saving Private Ryan. They had sent tanks that had these like ducts or whatever around them. They were like these big balloons. They're called DD tanks. So they had a Sherman tank, and then they just surrounded it with this big floaty. But they lost like 95% of the tanks. So had they used actual amphibious tanks like that the Marines had used or whatever, Omaha Beach would have been a lot cleaner. But they did use a lot of those ducks, and then they used water buffaloes also in Europe to cross, and that's normally what the Marines used in the Pacific. They use what they call tractors or amphibious tractors.
Water buffaloes is a different amphibious craft. You don't mean literally water buffalo. Or do you?
No, exactly. No, water buffaloes are just a nickname for a. They're called LVTs. So they're like, LVTs, if you've seen, LVTs. If you look up the LVT, they're also called water buffaloes or alligators. And so they have a troop carrier, and they also have an armor, like actual tanks that are amphibious. And so the Marines were really, really good at making and designing those, except they were in such small number because the Marines themselves is a much smaller unit than the Army. So during the preps for D-Day, the Army asked the Marine Corps if they could use amphibious tanks, and they said no because they needed to use them at the time in Saipan and in like the Philippines. So again, had the Army sort of been able to utilize more amphibious crafts, then Omaha Beach in particular would have been a lot easier to get through. But yeah, they learned a lot from that. My slides are in again, so again, I apologize, I have to make a small edit there. But I will go back to this. Okay. So yeah. So again, going back here, my biggest influence again from history just had to do with my grandparents. My grandparents lived through, the 20th century, and they were pretty much all refugees that came to Canada during various points of the 20th century. And just giving some sort of, bullet points on this. So my maternal grandfather, so the father of my mother, was born in the Ottoman Empire all the way back in 1905, and he had gone through a pretty rough life. Living in what is called West Macedonia, and then he also grew up in Varna, Bulgaria. And also Varna at the time when he was growing up, I shouldn't even say it's part of Bulgaria, it was actually part of Romania. And because 1905, by the time he was, of course, 18, he had lived through a number of different wars that had gone through that entire area of the Balkans. So in 1912 and 13, there were two Balkan wars, which basically set the mood for World War One. Then, of course, World War One happened between 1914, 1918, and then what's either called the Greco-Turkish War or the Turkish War of Independence, which started in 1920 after a treaty, which kind of split up the Anatolian Peninsula. And this guy named Mustafa Kemal didn't like that. He was more of a Turkish nationalist, and so he started to invade the Italian areas and the Greek areas and the areas that were given to England, and he also went into Armenia and basically seized what is basically today what we would know as Turkey. So between 1912 and 1923, my grandfather had seen that, and he was 18 in 1923. And then in 1930, my grandfather came to Canada as a refugee. He had very strong left-wing political views that at the time the Romanians didn't really like. So he jumped ship and he came to Canada in 1930 as a political refugee. He was drafted to the Canadian Army, but he was a conscientious objector due to his political views. So he ended up giving humanitarian aid during the war. And then he lived until just a few weeks before his 93rd birthday. And he was just a very, very gentle person. He loved gardening. He loved, he was a farmer basically for most of his life. And he would tell a lot of these stories. Like I remember growing up and asking him how he had run a small convenience store, butcher shop, sort of small grocery shop in Toronto. And he always remembered what the price of bread was and coffee and whatever. He just had that kind of a brain, and he kept ledgers to the day that he died of everything that he ever bought and everything that he since he got off the boat in 1930. So he just had a very very disciplined kind of mind and lived a very very interesting hard life. My maternal grandmother was next. She was born in March of 1921. She was born in Toronto, but her parents were refugees that left the Ottoman Empire first in 1903. In 1903, a group of Macedonian nationalists committed what was called the Ilindian Preobrazhove, which is a long Slavic word, which was an uprising, and it was unsuccessful. So many ethnic Macedonians left for Canada and the US in 1903. 1912 was the Balkan Wars, and she grew up in Toronto. My great uncle, who I actually didn't know, he died about 5 years before I was born, but he served in the Royal Canadian Air Force during World War II. He landed, I'm not sure exactly if it was the same day as D-Day, but he landed sort of around D-Day, maybe plus or minus, well, I shouldn't say minus, but maybe he landed 3 or 4 days or a week after, and then he fought in the war until the Netherlands was liberated, and he did see combat action. And then, of course, my grandmother had a big family, so she had a brother and she had 2 other sisters, and they had a lot of cousins. So many of her cousins actually served in the Second World War, including when I was growing up. One of my first cousins, I believe, or one of my grandma's first cousins, I should say, he was an older gentleman named Bob. And I remember going over to his house when I was in high school, and he had like a den that was basically his room where he kept all of his war memorabilia. So he had letters and pictures and stuff, and he was also he was in the army. And again, I think he landed somewhat after on D-Day with the Canadian Army, and he fought his way basically through France and into the Netherlands and even into Germany. And he was there for the liberation of Paris. So I saw lots of photos, and he collected he had like Hitler Youth knives, and he had a bunch of stuff from the Nazis and stuff. Like it was really interesting, the stuff that he had collected. My paternal grandmother came next. She was born in October 1921. And she had kind of a very interesting history too, because my great grandfather, whom I didn't know, made boots for the Austro-Hungarian army during World War One, and then she ended up making boots because she was a shoemaker for the Hungarian army during World War II. So they were always in factories and part of the war effort. My great uncle, again, someone I did not get to meet, he died during the war. He was forcibly conscripted into the Hungarian army. And of course, for those people who know, Hungary in World War II went and fought with the Nazis. They were part of the Axis. And they went to fight in the Eastern Front, and they committed horrible atrocities against the Jewish community and the Ukrainian community and the Roma community, just horrible. So the story that I got was my great uncle saw those things. And then unfortunately, when he came back, he had PTSD and some problems, and he died. So, pretty tragic. My grandma lost her father and her brother during the war. So the other thing is she also lived through the Allied bombings of Budapest. So when I was growing up, my grandmother was deathly afraid of thunderstorms. So whenever it would be a big thunderstorm outside, she would get into a really huge panic attack, and she would lock herself in the restroom or whatever. And I never knew why. My sister, who's older, kind of remembers this a bit more, because my grandmother died. I was 7. My sister was 11. I remember asking my grandfather one time, why was my grandmother so afraid of thunderstorms? And he said, well, you have to understand, thunderstorms and artilleries and bombing, they kind of sound the same. So your grandmother was kind of getting PTSD. She was reliving those bombings that she was a part of. And it just couldn't hit me with a ton of bricks. We just used to think, oh, grandma, she's, again, she's afraid. Why is she so afraid? But, there's a reason behind that. And, it's obviously a terrible reason, but that's what her memories were. And then my paternal grandfather, he was born January 1927, and his life was very, very interesting. My grandfather joined a resistance movement during the Second World War. He was Jewish. Both of his parents died in the Holocaust. And he was imprisoned in 1944 by the Nazis. After the war, of course, there was the Hungarian Revolution in 1956. He was arrested by the communist police. He was interrogated. And that prompted him to leave with my grandmother and with my father. And they walked on foot from Budapest. They crossed the Austrian border, and then eventually they came to Canada. So I grew up with a lot of these stories, people that survived the war, that saw Paris get liberated, that were there, a few days after D-Day. And, my grandfather always remembered Turks coming into the village and doing horrible things, and Greeks coming in and, and being forced and having no democracy. And so I was always aware of, having my family going through these horrible atrocities, but being able to come to Canada and sort of set up a new life, and then, bring those stories that they had experienced firsthand and told us, in order for us to be appreciative of the fact that, living in Canada, we live in peace. We have a very stable democracy. We have social issues and social problems, but we deal with them, in a different way. We deal them in a democratic way. We have a good healthcare system, a welfare system, just to always know where we came from and to be appreciative. So I would say that those memories and those stories were my first inspiration and influence into learning about history and the past. When I was in high school and community college, so now the age is roughly 14 to let's say 22, I started getting really involved in movies and television shows. And these are just some examples of some of the media that really influenced me at the time. So when I was in high school or just before high school, my favorite movie of all time is Platoon. I don't know if you guys have seen it or know about it. It's a movie about the Vietnam War. So it's a Vietnam War film with Charlie Sheen. It's from 1986, so he's like 20. Tom Berenger's in it, Willem Dafoe's in it, Johnny Depp's in it, Forrest Whitaker's in it. It's like a fantastic movie. But I saw this movie, I think I was like 13 or 14, watched it on television, and I just loved it. And I probably watched it over 100 times since then. And it's a history movie. It's about Vietnam. It's about war. It's about soldiers. It's like, I don't know, just very, very different kind of interesting film. The other one is Born on the 4th of July. I know some people don't like Tom Cruise, but it's Tom Cruise's best performance, in my opinion, his best acting performance ever. He plays a gentleman named Ron Kovic, who I was lucky enough to meet a little while ago, maybe 13, 14 years ago. It's it's another war movie. It's also like Platoon, written and directed by Oliver Stone, based on a book, which is the memoir of Ron Kovic called Born on the 4th of July. I highly recommend that because there's also a part of that movie where he comes home and he's trying to deal with health issues and stuff and being neglected, and it's very powerful. When I was in high school in 1998, when I was 15, both The Thin Red Line and Saving Private Ryan came out. I think I may have seen The Thin Red Line in 99 when it was released, but the summer of 98, and then it was Saving Private Ryan. And I remember, we just talked about that a little bit about the opening scene on Omaha Beach. And then they re-released it in the fall. They re-released Saving Private Ryan in the fall. And I remember watching it again. And as far as combat scenes, memorable movie scenes of all time, that opening 20 minutes is just completely brutal, gory, but like some of the best, I would say, cinematic, battle sequences. And just knowing what these guys went through and how veterans of D-Day publicly thanked Steven Spielberg for making that such a bloody, gory film, just very, very harrowing. There is also a Star Trek connection. For those who know the original series, James Doohan, who played Scotty, he was a member of the Canadian Army, Royal Canadian Army, and he landed on Juno Beach on June 6, 1944, which is, of course, one of the 5 beaches that the Allies invaded. I believe he was with the Canadian Artillery. He was wounded, but he saw the film, and he also publicly thanks Steven Spielberg because next to Omaha Beach, the second most heavily defended beach was Juno Beach. So it was also pretty bad, and James Doohan saw a lot of that stuff. And then for movies, Europa, this is a movie about 30 years old. It's about a young Jewish man who hides the fact that he's Jewish and joins the German army and fights, and then becomes a prisoner of war with the Soviets, and then actually fights for the Soviets. And it's actually based on someone's real life. So just again, these movies were just quite fantastic. And just briefly to go through some of these TV shows and miniseries before we move on. Combat is an old show from the 1960s. It was on ABC. It was about a squad of soldiers in World War II. So it was basically like a war movie, but extended to a TV show. Tour of Duty was a show on CBS from 87 to 1990. It was about Vietnam. Band of Brothers, which comes out of Saving Private Ryan. That came out when I was in college. In 2001, there was a miniseries, a 2-part series, I should say, called Uprising, which was about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which aired on NBC, and then Blackadder. I don't know if you guys, any British fans here, I'm sure probably remember BBC's Blackadder had 4 seasons. The first 3 seasons dealt with kind of like Elizabethan, Victorian, kind of older English history. But the last season, which was called Blackadder Goes Forth, I believe, or Goes On, one of those two, was about World War I and the trench
goes
warfare.
Forth,
and
yeah.
Yeah, goes forth. And yeah, very like I think only 6 episodes a season, but the very final scene of the very final episode of Blackadder Goes Forth is quite like pretty shocking, pretty devastating, I think.
Interesting
So,
story about that final scene.
Mhm.
Sorry. Just the final scene was never meant to be filmed that way, and it's that they accidentally destroyed the footage, so they had to slow it down, and that's why we ended up with that final ending for Blackadder Goes Forth.
Oh, really? Because it's pretty infamous if you know Blackadder. And I remember watching that as a teenager, watching those 6, and then because in Canadian TV is very, we get a lot more American TV, but of course we get a lot of BBC, Channel 4, and so forth. So a lot of like Doctor Who and whatever. And Blackadder was one of those ones I used to watch quite a bit with Rowan Atkinson and Hugh Laurie, which when they went on to do quite amazing things, just not just in the UK but also in the US. I got into my undergrad pretty late. I was, I guess, like 34, I guess, when I started undergrad. Yeah, in 2017. So that was a little bit later. But I started my undergrad in Canada in a Canadian university. And I sort of started to develop different interests, and I started to learn different things about history. So on the left side here, these are just things that I kind of learned, not necessarily did they become interests of mine in that sense, but they were very valuable things to learn about history. So, I learned there's different perspectives on history, and there are different schools of thought. When most people think of history, I especially like this, they might think of political history, which is very much chronological. It's about people. It's about, maybe battles and wars and dates and generals and so forth. But there's different interpretations. So one of the first things that, you learn when you get into an undergrad history course is different sources of history. And we have primary sources and secondary sources. The difference being primaries, of course, are firsthand accounts. Secondary sources are secondary accounts, and how we need to look at both, because some people will observe history and they might not know the exact reason why this larger developing thing is going on. So if you think of American history and you think of the Civil War, for example, diaries from the Civil War are primary. They help, very, very much get into the thoughts of a soldier. But years and years later, when things are discovered, then historians will give it into a larger, more bigger context, and that's the secondary source. I also learned a little bit about what's called social history. And social history, it comes from Germany throughout the 1960s. And it was the idea that, marginalized communities and people who are generally overlooked in society also have a history. So we're talking about those who are people of color, the indigenous peoples, children, women, LGBTQ, the disabled, etc. They have a history. And oftentimes throughout history, they are either ignored or put to the side. So social historians will look for those kinds of, narratives. And it is interesting the fact that obviously when war is happening, women suffer quite a bit. They sometimes are called to in World War II to actually make the ordnances and the armaments. But you think of the emotional sides of, losing a husband. Again, it's heteronormative because of the times. But, losing a husband essentially means you lose your ability to gain money and your children go fatherless. And what's a life like for a woman after that? Well, that's a very interesting part of history that generally, like political historians like myself, don't really look into, but social historians do. Urban history is very interesting. It's not just about architecture, which is a wonderful type of history to look at movements and so forth. But if you think of things like gentrification, think of public spaces, think of the way cities were designed, think of how London was back in 1890. There wouldn't have been many parks. There was tons of pollution, children working in factories. Today, there's completely the opposite. We're talking about, solar powered and bike lanes and all this kind of thing. So urban historians will look at that. Historiography, of course, is the study of the writings of history, but also the writings of historians themselves. And I took a couple classes on this because what we do in historiography is we look at the actual texts or books from historians and usually in modern times and essentially critique it and try to figure out, what are the writings and who are they for and things like this. So it's a very interesting sort of more macro perspective of history. And then we get into narratives, right? We have to ask ourselves questions as historians when we look at a document. We have to think about who is history written for. So is history written for the people who win the wars? And of course, then we're neglecting all the people who lose, including, which is what social historians go after, or people who are born into a non-privileged status. Then who gets to write history? Because is it the winners who write history? What about oral traditions? We think about colonialism throughout North and South America, Africa, Asia, and Australia. Well, the colonial powers wrote the history. The indigenous peoples had their own history, but they were largely forgotten. And then who experiences history? Do we all experience history? Is there a class divide? And all that kind of thing. So again, some of the stuff I don't necessarily take into my own perspectives today, but it was very valuable to learn those things. And then the other part here are just some subjects I wanted to go over on what I took. This is not a complete list, but history. Of course, history classes are often subdivided by continent, and so I took European, African, North American and Asian and South American history courses. And in Europe, I took a European history course, which dealt with from the years 1815 to 1914. So that's the end of the Napoleonic Wars to the beginning of World War I. I took a class on European nationalism, the French Revolution, which is incredibly interesting, as well as terrorism. In African history, I studied 3 classes. One was on decolonization after World War II and some of its problems and issues. I did a class on African economic history, which then led me to a more specialized class where I looked at what's called political ecology. So this is natural resources. And of course, we know that the West and the Western colonials really, really plundered the African continent of diamonds and gasoline and lots and lots of stuff. So I read a lot about that. Rubber was another one. In North America, I did take classes on the American Revolution, including some of the ideas behind the revolution, colonialism in Canada, and indigenous history in Canada and in North America, which I had never really done before, because when I was growing up, indigenous history was there, but it wasn't as emphasized as it is now. In Asian history, I took a course on the 19th century East Asia, so the end of the Qing dynasty and so forth. And then one on communism in China, which included Mao and the Cultural Revolution. And then finally, for South America, I took a class on the Spanish and Portuguese colonial history. So I learned about Hernan Cortés, and I learned about New Spain, and I learned about the indigenous peoples, the Taínos, and the Caribs, as well as the Tupis in Brazil, and some of the issues going on in the Amazon right now with indigenous peoples. I learned about some of the Dominican Catholic priests that were against colonialism and the indentured servants. I learned the difference between the different, and this is always a tragedy for history, but the different categories of people. So the whites, the mulattoes, the Chicanos, and all these kinds of Mayorkas and Judaismos and so forth. So how the Spanish and the Portuguese, subdivided people.
May I just say something? Just add something, because last week we were talking about the difference between Brazilian Portuguese and European Portuguese, and then we talked about the different anyway. One of the reasons why our Brazilian Portuguese is stressed on syllables instead of the phrase, like it's because of the Tupi influence. Because the Tupi language sounds a lot like ta 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 ta, and we have a lot of Tupi words. So I think that's one of the reasons. I don't know that for sure. I don't have any evidence, but something that I I suppose to be true.
It would make sense. Again, you have to think about when a language enters a completely different world, from Europe to Brazil, to South America, it's going to adapt to your neighbors. And if your neighbors are not Spaniards and Frenchmen and Arabs, then of course you're going to take on some speech patterns. And I'm sure, again, in Brazilian Portuguese, I've heard, because I'm not as familiar with Brazilian Portuguese, but there are words that do come from indigenous languages and maybe also African languages. So that makes complete sense
Abacaxi.
because, yeah, 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 and traditions are different as well. Exactly. So most languages, unless they are in a mountain or on an island, are usually do not evolve in a vacuum. They evolve around their friends
Yeah.
and others as well. And I find that with Hungarian as well.
I just wanted to bring it up because I remember last week we were talking about that, and I had thought about this before, but I couldn't think about like what changed, why are they so different in something so essential in the language, you know? And then it just occurred to me when I said, I feel like, yeah, I know we have a lot of Tupi influence, so that's probably and our Brazilian Portuguese sounds a lot like what I think the Tupi sounds like, you know. If you think of the Tupi words, they're a lot like our Brazilian Portuguese.
Of course, and yeah, the other thing too is to note there were hundreds, if not thousands, of different groups and cultures and traditions of the indigenous peoples before the French, the English, the Portuguese, and the Spanish came over, and you know the tragedy of those things with the Incas and the Mayas. We learned a lot about how Cortez, when he took the city of Tenochtitlan, he really sided with a certain group against another group, and it's just very tragic. So what I'm glad at least now is that those narratives are becoming more popular in history, especially academic history. I know that, you know, in Europe, we kind of go through very similar things a lot, and it's easy to be very, very like Eurocentric, but I'm very, very glad that I learned who the Tupi people were, because otherwise I wouldn't know. And also for the people in the Amazon and so forth, because other than that, it's just focusing on Europe. And even though I love it, there's a big world out there as well. In the fourth year, okay, so it's interesting the way that college and university works between the Commonwealth countries and non-Commonwealth countries. In Canada, and I know in the Commonwealth countries like Great Britain and Australia, usually a Bachelor of Arts is a 3-year program. I think that might be the same in some US schools, but in Canada, there's also a fourth year option, which would make it very similar to an American undergrad. So 3 or 4 years. So I studied basically transferred into a particular university. I got my bachelor's, so my 3 years bachelor's, and then I took an option to do a 4th year, which is called an honors year. And at the end of this year, I wrote a thesis, which was 15 pages. And at the time, I decided to go a little obscure and talk about what was called the German Revolution and the German Civil War, which happened just after World War One, and actually even started kind of a couple days even before World War One ended. So basically around November of 1918 to roughly, I think, April of 1919. And so the person on the left here is Rosa Luxemburg. If you haven't heard of her, she was a young woman born in Poland, spent most of her adult life in Germany. She was Jewish. She happened to be a communist. She founded this thing called the Spartacus League, named after Spartacus, of course, the Roman slave revolter. Or the movie is Spartacus is sort of about him. She ended up, her and her Spartacus League ended up taking over the city of Berlin for a short period in January of 1919, before they were crushed by a militia of far right-wing nationalist Germans. And then a few months later, in the spring of 1919, on the right-hand side, we have a map of the Bavarian Soviet Republic, and the Bavarian Soviet Republic lasted for 3 weeks. They wanted to make an actual satellite state of the USSR, and it was also crushed by a group called the Freikorps, or Free Corps, I guess. And some of those people in the Freikorps or Free Corps would end up becoming like very influential Nazis. So it's kind of this, like, I looked at the scare tactics that were being used. I looked at Rosa Luxemburg. She wrote a lot until she later died. She was actually executed in January of 1919. So I looked at this whole situation and what went on, and sort of how it kind of started, where Germany was becoming more right wing. So that was a 15-page paper. In my master's program, which I'm in now, I've done a couple of PowerPoint presentations. I've also done a couple of essays. So I'll say to which ones are which. But one of the first things I did was I did a large PowerPoint presentation, about 20 slides, to a class on dictatorships in Eastern Europe. And I talked about Romanian history, especially following World War I. So the photo is of a guy who is like basically burned into the collective psyche of every Romanian. His name is Nicolae Ceausescu, and he was the communist dictator of communist Romania from 1965 to 1989. So my PowerPoint presentation dealt with Romania winning World War I, essentially, and then transitioning towards communism. And then he and his wife were actually executed by the Romanian people, by the new Romanian ruling party, I guess, on 25th December of 1989, live on television. And was called the Romanian Revolution. So I went through that whole history. And then I kind of obsessed with Romance languages. Now that I'm learning Romanian, I really enjoy them. And there's some really interesting Romance languages that were in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Not just Romanian, which of course is in the east, but in the west, this peninsula here is called the Istrian Peninsula. It's part of Croatia. It's like a little triangle that sticks out of Croatia into the Adriatic Sea. And there are people there today that still speak a dialect of Romanian, as well as sort of a dialect, maybe its own language, but it's very similar. It's called Istriot, and is very similar to Venetian. So I wrote an essay about their developments and how they got to this particular place, and how they were treated, and what their lives were like in Austria-Hungary. When, of course, now most of these individuals would have become either part of Yugoslavia after World War II, or part of Italy, and most left to become part of Italy. So there are only collectively less than 2,000 people that actually speak the Romanian dialect and this other Istriot language still left here in Istria. But it's just very interesting, because of course those languages come from Latin, and a lot of them, roots of those words have been there for a very long time. And there's just very, very few people there now. I did another PowerPoint presentation to a class about economic life of the Jewish community in Transylvania following the First World War. And the picture here is of a vineyard, because basically the Jewish community, about 55% of us participated in winemaking, which is a really, really big deal for the Jewish community, because we use it every week. And so I took a look at what was the agricultural life of the Jewish community. Was the Jewish community accepted in Romania, which they generally were. Also, Moldova is part of Romania, and Transylvania kind of part of Romania after World War I. So I just looked at economic life and economic activity, especially winemaking and so forth. And the last one was another gentleman here. His name is Josip Broz Tito, and he was the communist dictator of Yugoslavia from 1946, 45, 46, until he died in 1980. And the economics in Yugoslavia was called market socialism. They had these little cooperatives that were publicly owned, and they were owned by the workers, and it kind of worked for a little while, and then it didn't work. And I talked about hyperinflation and all this kind of stuff. So between all these four things, my interests are kind of in like history of dictators, history of languages, history of the Jewish community, history of economics. That's kind of where all these things develop. And then very briefly today, a little cut off here, so I do apologize. My academic interests are more in the region of Central Europe. So I'm mainly doing research and studying history of Hungary, Romania, and Croatia. Usually Transylvania and Istria. I like the late modern era, which begins with the French Revolution and ends at the the end of World War II. And then the two big areas of history that I've been studying is the history of nationalism, revolution, and language, how they all develop between 1848, which was a big year of revolutions in Europe, until the start of the Second World War. And then also interwar Jewish community. So interwar from 1918 to 1938 in the Jewish community in Transylvania, which has become a big interest of mine. What were they doing? Where did they come from? What happened to them? What were they farming, etc.? What were their neighbors saying about them? Did they get along with the non-Jewish community? And then, of course, other interests. You guys know I have a big interest in religion and religious studies. I really, really enjoy it. I love learning about that, especially comparative religious studies. Philosophy of religion, philosophy of language, philosophy of economics, science, I really enjoy. Economics itself, and then political ecology. So basically, what I try to do is just look Central Europe, look at some of the regions that I'm interested in, and then go from there. And so there's a lot of different topics and different things that I'm learning every day that take me to different paths and so forth. So yes, Julian.
What is political ecology?
Political ecology is basically the study of how governments and political groups and politicians treat natural resources. So, for example, in Africa, the study of the diamond mining or rubber. So, you have a natural resource. Sometimes rubber is not a natural resource, but comes from a tree. So it's the political implications of ecology. So do they exploit? Do they, what do they do with the natural resources? Who are the people that are trying to fight for the natural resources? Are they shared and owned equally? Like all that kind of stuff. So think of it like political science and ecology together, because unfortunately, our environment is a political issue, and that's part of it. So that is political ecology. So that is all that I have on that.
Question on this slide here.
Yeah.
Was Dracula Jewish?
Well, that's a very important question.
It's a very important question. So the answer is no, for two reasons. The first reason was Count Dracula, also known as Lord Erdőg. Erdőg is the word for devil in Hungarian. It's a very funny word, Erdőg. He was called in Bram Stoker's book as a person called the Székely Hungarian, sometimes called Széklers. They were Hungarians that moved to Transylvania in the Middle Ages, and they aren't Jewish. Like, there are obviously Jewish communities in Transylvania, but among the Széklers or the Székelys, there were none. So if he's a Székely, he's not Jewish. Okay. The second thing is, it is not kosher to eat or consume or drink blood. So,
of course,
if you were Jewish and you had to become a vampire, it would be a very, very hard decision. You wouldn't be able to be kosher. So basically, no. I would like to think yes. I believe if I'm not mistaken, the actor who first portrayed him was Bela Lugosi, or Lugosi Bela. I don't know if he was Jewish. He may or may not have been Jewish. There was a ton of Hungarian Jews in Hollywood at the time. His friend Peter Lorre was Jewish, the wonderful Peter Lorre, and was Hungarian. So someone can look that up, whether or not Bela Lugosi was Jewish. I can't remember. But
I think Joe looked
for all
something up,
technical reasons, for technical and practical reasons, you cannot be both, unfortunately.
That's Joe, I think, has something to say.
So my understanding is that Dracula was based on a Romanian ruler called Vlad Dracul, Dracul being Romanian for dragon. So given that he was a member of the ruling class, he probably wouldn't have been Jewish as well. Is that?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But
the
also
evidence. Sorry, Joe. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, yeah, I thought he was Romanian rather than Hungarian. That's why I was confused. There's a couple of other things I wanted to ask you about, but go on.
So Bram Stoker, was an Irishman. He wrote Dracula, but he did not actually use Vlad the Impaler as his inspiration, because from what I've what I understand, and I have been to Bran Castle, which is near Brasov, which is was the castle of Vlad. So there's no connection between Bram Stoker and Vlad, because Bram Stoker probably didn't know who Vlad was. So Bram Stoker created Count Dracula to be a Székely Hungarian count in it's kind of like northeast of a city called Cluj-Napoca in the mountains. That's where Dracula takes place. Of course, it also takes place in London and the train stations or whatever. But it being associated with Vlad the Impaler is a legend that developed earlier and developed a long time ago, because Vlad was, medieval prince. He drank the blood of the Turks. He his brutal stuff. I mean, that they impaled Turks. He put their heads on spikes along roadways so the Turks would get afraid and not attack more into what was called Wallachia, which was the part of Romania that he was the prince over. But yeah, there is a difference. The movie Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I love, from the early 90s, which is with, of course, Gary Oldman, who's one of the greatest Draculas ever. The problem with that movie is Keanu Reeves is terrible. Unfortunately, I like Keanu, but he's horrible. But they have this little puppet show at the beginning about Vlad, where they try to kind of sew in Vlad a little bit, and that's not exactly accurate. So they are separate. They are separate, but they cross over a little bit. So it's a little hard to know where one begins and one ends. But essentially, they are separate characters. One being real and one being fictional, of course.
So the Romanian tourist industry is really pushing it even more than I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a whole thing, isn't there, in Timișoara and all that. Anyway, is it Timișoara? No, Brasov, you were saying. Anyway.
That's right.
So one of your grandfathers, spooky. One of your, or maybe just cold. One of your grandfathers was in, what was it? Oh yes, Romania as well. Was in Romania, and you were saying had left-wing views and therefore fled to Canada because he was being persecuted by the authorities in the 1930s. Would that have been Antonescu, or was he not in power yet at that point?
No. So Varna today, which is where my grandfather grew up. He was born in another place, but he grew up in Varna. So that part of the world is called South Dobruja, and it traded between Bulgaria and Romania a couple times. So in 1930, it happened to be part of Romania.
Anymore,
it wasn't. No, now after World War II, it became part of Bulgaria. But before World War I, it was also part of Bulgaria. So it just so happened to be that when my grandfather was there, living there mostly in like the 19-teens, 1920s, it was part of Romania. Ion Antonescu came to power essentially in 1938, and that's a really interesting story because of the kings of Romania. The king at the time was a guy named King Carl II, and that guy who became king in like the late 20s was called the Playboy of Romania. And this is why Ion Antonescu was able to take over, because that guy was just dating princesses from Italy and going abroad and having affairs. So by the time Romania and the war was starting, Ion Antonescu became the prime minister. And then in 1938, he had basically taken over. When the war started, there was no proclamation for Romania. They didn't say, okay, we're joining the Axis or we're joining the Allies, because the king was not, he didn't care, he wasn't involved. when he was given the news that the war had started several months later in 1939, he had claimed that he didn't even know that there was a war going on, and that was Karl II. So then they dumped him and they brought back this guy named King Michael. And if you remember your Romanian history, King Michael was first king when he was 6 years old. Then they kicked him out when he was 9. Then they put in Karl II, and then they put in Michael again when he was 19, and Michael was the last king. So Ion Antonescu ended up taking over the army, and by 1941, very tragically, Ion Antonescu and the Iron Guard went into a city in eastern Romania called Ias, also called Iași, and committed the largest anti-Jewish pogrom in human history. Pogroms had always been a problem. These pogroms, of course, were just brutal, massacres of the Jewish community. There had been several of them in Odessa and Minsk and Brest and Moscow and like all over Eastern Europe. There were tons of them, and about 13,000 plus Jews were killed in the matter of 2 days. And the biggest one until that was a pogrom in Odessa, which claimed 5,000 Jewish lives, and that was like in 1905 or 1910. So Ion Antonescu was merciless. But by 1944, King Michael, who had been reestablished as the king, hunted him down, found him, and the year later, when the war ended, Ion Antonescu was, of course, tried in Romania for war crimes and put to death. So in 1930, the king would have probably been, I think it was Michael. I think Michael came in 1927. Yeah, Michael came in 1927. And then he was 6. And then by the time he was 9, it was 1930. And that's when this King Karl, I think his name was, I think it was Karl II, if I'm not mistaken. Someone the second, and I think it was Karl. So in 1930, there was a very precarious time because a lot of anarchists, communists, and Marxists were killing leaders. They were killing these leaders. And so from what I understand from my grandfather, he left. He actually went to Athens, and then from Athens, he jumped the ship to Canada.
Okay, so it's much earlier than Antonescu. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Is Karl the same as Carol? Because they had King Carol in Romania.
That was the first one. So the very, very first king of Romania was Karl, Carol, and they were German.
Okay.
So he reigned from 1881 or 2, and then he died in 1914. And then from 14 to 27 was Ferdinand, I think, or maybe, you know what? Let me look it up so I'm not getting it wrong here. Let me just look them up because I could be getting them wrong. Because one was Karl and one was Ferdinand, and now I don't really remember who was who.
I just wasn't sure if Carol was just the Romanian version of Karl, because I've seen it in
Karl, exactly. So I was right. So it was Karl, Ferdinand, Michael, Karl II, Michael, and it is Karl. Yeah, okay. Karl, Carol, which is the same as the German Karl. Karl.
Yeah.
And again, that house that they came from was a Prussian house. So the Romanian kings were German; they were Prussians.
Interesting.
Yeah, they didn't want to pick a Romanian nobility because then the other houses would have been fighting, and that's what usually happened in feudal Europe at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting as well. You were talking about the Freikorps, because that's something that I learned about way back in school. But like how the way it was taught to me, which I thought was quite kind of sums it up quite well, is that basically because the Weimar state was so unstable at that time, they had to rely on basically the far right to crush the far left. And so obviously they then, had that came home to roost, didn't it?
Yeah, they didn't have a proper army. the Weimar Republic shortly after World War I, because there were a lot of restrictions on what Germany
Oh
could
yes,
produce.
in Versailles.
Like they lost their air force, and they had to militarize the Rhine, and they got rid of hundreds of thousands of armaments, tanks. Like they burned stuff in Germany. So there were the police in Berlin when the Spartakists were uprising, but they were not equipped to handle the Spartakists. So these ultra nationalist, far right monarchists, they were pro bringing back the Kaiser. They were quite fanatical. They were mostly young school students, and there are posters where one particular poster that I saw, which was basically of a student. Okay, and there's a desk, and the student is sort of like wearing their student uniform, but they're putting on the Freikorps uniform. So it's almost like they're trying to recruit young students by saying you can be a student, but then almost like joining a reserve unit or something as an adult, okay, like an army reserve or whatever. You can then go and you go to camp and this kind of stuff to protect the Weimar. But one of the most interesting things is if you look up famous members of the Freikorps, you get people like Rudolf Hess, who was the architect of the Holocaust. Reinhard Heydrich, who was the governor of Bohemia and Moravia, who was assassinated by the Czech resistance in 1942. I think Himmler was a part of it. I think Goebbels was a part of it. Like a lot of the high-ranking Nazis, not Hitler for whatever reason, but there are quite a few people that would end up in the Nuremberg trials.
Yep.
Who were a part of the Freikorps, and a lot of them did claim that that's where the seeds were planted for at least their nationalist, ideologies. And then after a certain amount of time, it evolved into, the horrible beast of all that other nonsense. But it was just very, very interesting to read old like actual newspaper articles that were translated from German that were coming out of Berlin and stuff, because like it was a mess, very sadly. And then also, just the last point being, in 1921 there was I think it was 20 or 21, I want to say one of those 2 years. The next big event in Berlin was actually a far right putsch by and I forget what the guy's name was now. It's kind of slipped my mind, but a gentleman who had a lot of power and a lot of wealth founded this putsch, and it was this big demonstration because they wanted the Kaiser back. And I think that was maybe a year, maybe a little bit more than a year. I just forget the name. You can look it up, Joe. But he had a lot of like monarchists and a lot of ultra nationalists, people from the German Fatherland Party, and that was the idea. They went to this particular part of Berlin to demonstrate that they wanted the Kaiser, who had been in the Netherlands, and they wanted him to come back to reassert the monarchy. So Kapp was the guy's name. I'm sorry, Kapp, C-A-P-P.
Kapp, yeah, the Kapp putsch.
The Kapp putsch, and that happened like I think a year, less than a year from the Spartacist uprising. So that switch, like you can imagine, going from a communist uprising to this far right-wing reaction revolution, counter-revolution, is in such a short amount of time. At that time, now of course everything happens within a minute or two, but kind of terrifying. So that's why I wanted to look into it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. But yeah, thank you guys. I hope that was okay. Again, I'll refine my stuff a little more for our other PowerPoints, but I really do enjoy doing them. So
I thought it was very interesting.
Everyone in the audience.
That was amazing. You really are a professor.
Thank you.
It's my type of geekery.
That's great.
It's the way my brain works. I have no idea,
That's even better when it's natural.
Yeah.
And I think it was very interesting to start with, like you said, like your history, like you're contextualizing who you are, you come from, before even delving into any specific subjects, which I know you're gonna do. But yeah, that was very, very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and then also through high school. I don't know what high school is like, of course, for everyone out there. But in the ninth grade, freshman year, we had to take a history course. And then from 10th grade, sophomore, 11, junior, 12, senior year, there were options, but every year I took a history course. Like every year, I just wanted to learn something different. So I took world history, 20th century, I took 19th century, I took all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, in Brazil, we have the heart. Yeah, look at that. Say hi to Alicia. Everybody has their own
beautiful.
heart.
That's right.
That's a really
Here in
beautiful
Brazil,
guitar. Yeah.
here in Brazil, what happens is like we have a series of classes that we have to take. Everybody has to take through high school. It's not like I know how in the US you have. I'm not sure if it's the same in Canada, but you can select classes, or in the UK, you select classes according to your interests, right? And then you already have different something that it's more like college was for me, like when you pick your classes and you have different classes with different people, right? And then here it's more like the same as the rest of school. It's like you have the same group of people, and then you take all your classes together. You stay in the same classroom, and the teachers come and go to your classroom. And then after, at the end of the high school equivalent, there is a test. Nowadays, there's like a test to assess the quality. I think the quality of the learning of high school throughout the country, you know. But they can also work as a university, or in place of a university entrance exam. But traditionally every college or every university will have a university entrance exam, and then usually our high school is more like a preparation for that, so it's like a standardized test, so we have to study all those classes. So everybody takes history, geography, physics, biology, chemistry, and it's much more global, you know. So I remember when I met my ex-husband, who was American, that we were talking about this and that, and then there was something about American history that I made a comment on, and he was like, how do you know that? I'm like, because I went to school, you know. And for him it was like such a foreign concept that, you know. And then throughout our relationship also, I remember he was impressed that I knew a little bit of physics, a little bit of biology, a little bit of chemistry, you know. I had some notions of these things because that's the way our educational system is here, for better or for worse. So yeah.
Yeah, I never had to do physics, but I mean, I did have to do the first 2 years we had to do like a general science course, and then we got to select which one we wanted to do after. So I took human biology because we got to do labs and we got to do dissecting. For some reason, I really enjoyed that kind of stuff. Not for any morbid
You
reason, but to be
dissected
completely
humans?
honest, pigs and frogs and stuff. But
Oh, it's still even
we
worse.
can only hope that one day. But yeah, physics was always where it was like numbers, math. That's the one thing that's really, really quite interesting. It's like everyone kind of brain is programmed to something. And so if you
Yeah.
put math equations in front of me, unless it's like very simple arithmetic, maybe a simple algebra, I'm fine. But there's just certain things about numbers that it just doesn't compute. Like
Mhm.
I can't do it. You know what I mean? But then there's other things that I can remember these facts about, like
Yeah,
dates
it's
and
awesome.
history. Like it's just the way my brain works. And some
Yeah,
people are good at building things. My dad, I think I mentioned the time before or whatever, but my father used to, when he retired, he used to actually build audio equipment. So he used to be able to solder, and he would, build speakers, and he would do woodworking, and he would like do inlays. And I was like, that's amazing. Like I don't know how to. I don't know. Like I have a computer in front of me, and I know what's inside of it, and it blows my mind that someone soldered these wires in certain places, and now I talk to you. Well, like I don't know
right.
what that means. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Like it's just what's like a green panel with a bunch of colored wires. Like where did they go? What do they do? How do I do this? So again, it's just a different thing, I guess, in
I
someone's head, right?
Yeah, I think I have mixed feelings about the whole educational system, the differences and all of that, because I think on the one hand, I think it's really interesting that you can allow teenagers to choose what they want to do, what they're stronger at, and uh, promote their motivation and their interests, you know, for a future and a career and all of that. But at the same time,
Mm.
your brain is still developing. It's like going through a lot of changes. So sometimes you don't know. You know sort of what you like, more or less what you don't like. And I think it's also interesting to be able to have an opportunity to be, even if briefly, in touch with all these different things. Like, I for example, I think physics is fascinating. I'm horrible at math, but I think the theory of physics and all of that is fascinating. So I remember when I took my entrance exam, I remember that there's a specific way in which the university where I went to, that their test is done, that instead of being multiple choice, it's called sum. So it's like you have numbers, you have like alternatives, which are like, instead of being A, B, C, D, E, they're like 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 16, 32, 64, I think. And then you have more or less, you don't have to have all of these options. And then what happens is one or more options can be correct, right? And then you're supposed to write the sum of the correct options as your answer. What happens there is that if you select, I don't know how that works mathematically, but it works. If you select an alternative that is wrong, you don't get anything for that question, right? But if you select, let's say if there are 3 alternatives that's correct, but you get 2, you get a partial. So there are some numbers that you can have, like some different numbers that would be correct. Some numbers would be partial, a number would be the full question. And if you get, so I was trained to do like, just select something you're sure of. If you're not sure of, don't select it, because so my physics test in the entrance exam, I remember that I didn't get any of there were 12 questions, I think. I didn't get any of them. I didn't get the full score, but I got a little bit of score for every one of them because I liked physics. I thought it was interesting, So the math part drove me crazy, but so and it's not something that I was gonna do professionally or anything like that, but it's something that made me interested in understanding things around the world and this and that up to this day makes me want to, like, I don't know, just watch Neil deGrasse Tyson or whatnot, or just science communicators and these things. So I think there's a positive aspect to that.
Yeah, failing something can make you hate it. And if it's a lot of pressure, especially, I find that too. Like, and I don't know what it's like for you guys or Chad and Steve, but I think our education systems in Canada is a little bit more like America, because we have like pop quizzes, we have essays, we also have the multiple choice stuff. I hate multiple choice, and just it's either right or it's wrong, and it's like the worst subjects are the ones you don't do well in, and then when you have an exam or you have a test, you panic, and then when you panic, you don't do well, and then you don't like that subject. So it's like, for me, that's what math was, and also French, because in the first grade in Canada, we learn how to conjugate verbs in French, which is insane for 6 and 7-year-old kids to learn the conjugation of French verbs. So, like,
especially when your first
French
language doesn't conjugate.
But it's also a very specific accent, and like, it's just, nobody likes it. That's not what it should be like. You should be wanting to, like, only 13% of Canadians speak French, and like 9% are in Quebec. Like, everyone should want to speak French, because if you speak French, you have much better job opportunities. But people just despise it because you just learn these heady concepts when you're young, and it doesn't do anything. And I find math can be like that sometimes. So yeah, it's just whatever you gravitate towards that are fun. Like, I always liked music. I always liked history. I always liked geography, because that's what I was good in,
Yeah.
Other than that,
sense.
But science was always tough,
But do you see my point that I think that is very positive, especially because you have the labs and all of that, which we don't. All of our knowledge is theoretical. But at the same time, I don't think that what I had was bad either, because it exposed me to different things that I wouldn't have been exposed otherwise, because I wasn't interested in that. And then sometimes as a teenager, you don't even know if you're going to be interested in that unless you experiment with it, unless you have those classes, and those things. So these are just things that I think about sometimes, like how to know if I had to choose like a system, I don't know what I would choose. You know, if I would choose for me or for if I had kids or for a country.
So hard.
I think we've.
hard
Oh, go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna add it's just difficult. That's all.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Education policy.
History, Britain, Illinois. I was going to say, I think, and I don't know if this is the same in Canada now, but the U.S. has started to figure this out a little bit better here in later years with things like satellite schools and STEM schools, which really, I find, if there's somebody that does find at 12, 13, 14 that they have, they're talented. Yeah, that's probably a good word for it. Talented in things like science.
Inspired.
They can really start to steer that way. Inspired, great word for it. Or, then you have, you have some more, I don't want to call them traditional, but some more, maybe it's the what ultimately are kind of the liberal arts, the languages, the different English composition, theater type of, you have that type, that's not a STEM school, but that type of satellite school that, so there's more of a variation for kids that at a younger age can, if they are inspired or if they are talented in something, can really start to steer that direction and really hone that, which, for this group here, all being of approximate age, we probably didn't have as much of that because it was, you've got to learn this stuff. And then you go off to college and then it's okay. Now maybe you can start making your decisions, but you still need the core classes. So you still need to take a lab or two here. And
that's another difference. Because here, when you go to college, you don't go to college the same way you go there. You go to college to a specific program. So when you take the entrance exam, for example, I wanted to study English. So I had to take the entrance exam for English. And then for the English program, there were 30 spots,
sure.
So either you get in or you don't, and if you don't, you have to try again next year or try to different schools and all of that. So it's kind of crazy because it's all focused on this test and competition and elimination and all of that. But you enter already focused on the classes that you're going to, that are going to be, you don't declare a major halfway through. You just start already what you're studying, which is also a problem sometimes because people drop out and have to rejoin and have to take another test a lot of times. So also I have those things like I see the pros and the cons, because when you have to do a core classes and all of that, you have some time also to experiment and figure out, and then declare your major and go study your specific classes. But we don't have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I went, I knew exactly why I was there. I knew what I was going to school for. I was I right? Was I wrong? I don't know. But I was taking fourth year communications classes and then leaving that class and going to a first year math class just to get my core, stuff in. Yeah. But, I had that, I had that focus on that communications degree, and I knew that that's exactly the direction that I was going to go. And I'm glad I did. I have no question about that. But then I'm like, I got to take that math class, all right, I'll go take that. I got to go take that one science lab, so.
Absolutely. But then what happens is halfway through, if you wanted to, now I want to study whatever else that, you could change. You didn't have to go through with communication if you changed your mind.
It's true. I just would have had to pick up a few more, first and second level, whatever that new degree was course that I wanted.
Yeah. Here you'd have to drop out and apply again, take another entrance test, competing with people that are,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
That's one of the problems.
Yeah, I went to community college in the U.S. for 2.5 years when I lived in Los Angeles. That's what I was doing. So I started in January of 2009, and I ended up leaving it and getting my degree, my associate's degree, in June of 2011. So when I got there, and I had made some hiccups along the way, I would have done it differently. I wanted to be in film studies, and so I took a film studies degree at Santa Monica College, which is a great school, great location, and everything, like perfect. Like it was awesome. But the biggest problem was I had to transfer, and then I also had to take math and English courses, which was absurd. Having to take English courses, but I had to take them, and we had entrance exams, and I didn't know we had to take entrance exams. So I had not studied math since I was in high school, and I had not studied English since I was in high school. So I basically got one of the lowest grades in math, and like a very low grade in English. And so I had to take basic arithmetic, basic algebra, intermediate algebra, and then statistics. So I had to take 4 math classes, and all of those math classes, I received anywhere from a 50% to a 52% in. So I did pass the class, but like literally just barely. And then I took 3 English courses, and it was just, it was insane. And it had nothing to do with film classes. Like the film classes I took were awesome because it was in Los Angeles, and we were in editing suites, and we went to field trips, and I did internships, and it was incredible. But math and English, and I took like 7 of those courses out of whatever my program was, 20 or something. So it was anyway, it was absurd. And I don't know, I think they do that for international students, maybe to get a little more money out of them. But it was ridiculous. Here in Europe, also in Canada, we don't need math. When I went to my undergrad, we had to take two natural science courses, 2 humanities courses, and 2 social science courses as our contexts. But other than that, take whatever you want. Bye, Joe. Yeah.
Oh wait, is she leaving? Are you leaving? Or do you want to?
Sorry.
I gotta get going soon. Go make dinner because it's like 8 p.m. here. But
Oh, sorry.
But you want?
yeah, no, I wasn't. Hi, Bo.
Hey, Bo.
Hey,
Hey, for everybody, just really quick for everybody that hasn't caught Bo Explores yet. Bo's got a new channel out as well. In fact, I think I still have it up here. And
Is
if I
Bo
do,
Explores Bo Beats?
no, I don't think so.
There's Dora Explorer, there's Bo Beats, there's Bo Explores.
No, Bo Explores has the site. Oh, where did it go? I'm blind now. I'm looking at the screen and I don't see it. It's called Cult Conversations. It's at Cult Conversations.
You can post the link to, right, Steve?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely check it out. I think Bo posted his first video. Was it last night?
Awesome.
It was last night. I believe it was. I believe it was Bo's first. Yes, it was. And I'm looking forward to more. I know Bo's got some editing talents there, so looking forward to the edits. I was laughing because I dread editing. I dread the long form of a 30-minute video takes 4 hours to edit. And I never thought that I would, because I love the quality of an edited video, but my God, it is so easy to just hop on a live and do the live, and like we did today, throw up a quick PowerPoint or something on screen with you. But unless you're looking at, I have editing in my future dreams, but they're nightmares at the moment. So, but no, Bo had posted a live stream last night, a little live last night. I think that we're going to be seeing some more of them here, in the next over the weekend or maybe early next week. I don't want to commit to Bo, but I think that's what he was mentioning there. Definitely check it out. Definitely, like I say, it's at Cult Conversations. That's a great site name.
If you can post the link, I'd appreciate that.
I will grab the link, and I will grab the link to the channel and post it. But definitely, I subscribed yesterday. Definitely subscribe, watch what he's got up there. Like and share that out as well. So
let's plug everybody's.
another great
Well,
content provider. Yeah, go ahead, Chad. Sorry.
Thank you. I just, since we're on kind of the subject, I do want to mention any new channels that want to dip their feet in. They're welcome, or anyone that even wants to just hang out is welcome on the pre-show every Monday,
True.
2 hours before Levin Smith goes on, so 5 p.m. Clearwater time.
A pre-show when there is a show, because last Monday we had a pre-show, we had a post-show, and there was no show. It was funny.
I know. Well, he wrecked it because usually he goes on at 7 o'clock Clearwater time, and he went on at like 6 and 8 or something.
And it wasn't a Monday Night Live after party. He just had a debate with that guy. Yeah, I don't want to keep Joe very long. I just wanted to see if you still have. Do you have time to play a little bit before you go?
Sure, if you'd like me to.
Play yourself
I
out.
would.
Yeah.
And Freezing Project had asked.
Monday,
Can you ask
yes.
us to play? Yeah.
Ta-da.
So we'll just listen to Joe before she goes, and then we'll get back to the comments. And let me just put Joe here. How do I do this?
It's been a long time since I've played mandolin.
Great.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us.
There is the 1898.
Wow.
Thank you. That was
If you can
beautiful.
see
It was
inside
beautiful.
the.
Mm.
No, you have to
Nah,
take my word for it. 1898. So yeah, this is one I restored a while ago. And I'm starving, so I'm going to go and make some dinner.
Go ahead.
So
Thank you for staying a little longer.
Thank you for having me. And
Thank you.
Mark, this has been
course.
very interesting. Thank you for the history geek.
Thank you.
Good. And yeah,
Thank you so
I'll
much,
see
Joe.
what
Good to see you.
happens.
See you
Take
later,
care.
Joe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.
All right. So anybody who wants to, if you don't subscribe to Joe, yeah, she was streaming this to her channel too, but we don't have her channel in the description. But I have a banner here, if I can ever find it, because
Banner.
I had it up earlier. Here you go. So her personal professional YouTube is at Joe DeCeppo, and she also has a podcast at _the_influence. You guys should check that out too.
Very good.
And also, since we're in the subject of channels, Mark Turi has relaunched his channel. So everybody who's arriving now.
I'm trying to get that first video up. I just went for whatever reason. I think so. I tried to upload the very first interview that I did a long time ago with Mark Bunker, re-upload it, and it said something about the process not going through. So then I had to make. I got a confirmation, like an email confirmation from Google with a code, and so I'm gonna, once everything's done, I'm gonna go on, as I said, and just make sure that the